Hi everyone! Today I'm going to show you how to knit these socks in a slip stitch cable pattern. They're really very easy and are also suitable for beginners, and it's a really great opportunity to try out your first patterns. For this, you'll need a set of size 2.5 double-pointed needles and matching yarn. I used the Pastel Mix Uni yarn from Starkwolle, and I needed about 70 grams for my 2 socks. I'll show you exactly how to make the socks in just a moment. You'll start by casting on 60 stitches, and that's for both the women's and the men's socks. Make sure you leave a long enough tail. I always use 2 needles, which just makes it a bit looser. Here's how you cast on. You take the yarn like this, go in from underneath, pull the yarn over the other strand, go through here by the thumb. Go down through here by the index finger, go through this thumb loop, and you've cast on the first 2 stitches. Again, in under the thumb, grab the yarn from the index finger, through this loop, and that's the 3rd stitch cast on. Keep doing this until you have 60 stitches in total. Your work should look like this now, and after you've cast on the 60 stitches, you just pull the 2nd strand out. And we'll start with the cuff. It works like this. We start with a purl stitch. A purl stitch means the yarn is in front of the needle. We insert the needle into the stitch, grab the yarn, and pull it through the stitch. 1 purl stitch. Then knit 3 stitches. Knit stitches go like this, yarn behind the needle. We insert the needle into the stitch from back to front, grab the yarn and pull it through. Knit stitch, 1, 2, 3. After the 3 knit stitches, we purl 1 again. Yarn in front of the needle, insert from the front, grab the yarn, purl, then 3 knit stitches again. Alternating, knit 3, purl 1. That's the whole cuff, 1 purl. And make sure you always have 15 stitches on the needle, so 4, then purl again, 3 knit. Now at the beginning, especially for beginners to make it easier, you don't have to have exactly 15 stitches here on the needle. It doesn't really matter. For example, you don't have to split up the 3 knit stitches here. You can just take the new needle and continue with the purl stitch there. Purl 1, knit 3. So, we've knitted our first round, and to make it a round, we of course have to join it in the round. That means we take our double-pointed needles, making sure here that it doesn't get twisted or anything. And a tip for starting out, I would always slip the first stitch from the first needle onto the 4th needle. That means we now knit one more stitch with the fourth needle. One purl, and that already joins us in the round here, making it a bit easier. And then we knit the 3 knit stitches again. 1, 2, 3, and 3 knit stitches. Like I said, for your cuff, now knit round after round, alternating 1 purl stitch and 3 knit stitches. Just keep doing this until the cuff is about 6 centimeters long. Then I'll see you back here, and I'll show you how to do the leg. Once you've knitted your cuff 6 centimeters high, your work should look something like this. The pattern is very, very stretchy, so I knit both the women's and men's socks with 60 stitches. And the mock cables on the leg are also always worked with 60 stitches in total. If you want to knit for wider feet, you can just increase stitches at the heel or down on the bottom of the foot. But I'll show you that when we get to it. The slip stitch pattern is always knitted in 4 rounds. It's actually really simple, and it's perfect for beginners who can't knit cables yet, or even for people who, like me, find it a bit tedious to knit cables on socks, because you just have so many needles in your hand at some point. We start the first round by purling 1 stitch, and then slipping 1 purlwise. Slipping purlwise is really easy. You insert your needle into the stitch. You leave the yarn in back as usual, insert into the stitch as if you were going to purl it. So, from front to back, and just slip it onto the next needle. And that's how you slip a stitch purlwise. After that, we knit 2 stitches, and now we pull the slipped stitch, this one here, over the 2 knit stitches. Just insert your needle and lift it here. You can hold the yarn here a bit over the 2 knit stitches. That's really actually the hardest part of the whole sock, and it's really not that hard. Then we purl 2 stitches again, slip 1 stitch purlwise, so insert your needle again and just slip it onto the next needle. Knit 2 stitches and pass the slipped stitch over both knit stitches. Again, purl 2, slip 1 purlwise, knit 2. Pass the slipped stitch over both knit stitches and then purl 2 again. Now repeat the whole round. For our second round, we start again with a purl stitch. Then we knit 1 stitch and make a yarn over between the 2 knit stitches we pulled together earlier. A yarn over means we go behind the yarn with the needle, pull the needle forward, and now we have our yarn over here on the needle. After that, we knit 1 knit stitch again, and 2 purl stitches. We'll repeat this now, purl, purl, then for the knit stitch, knit, yarn over, knit, purl, purl. As they are, here you can see the bump from the purl stitch, and here are our 2 knit stitches where we passed the slipped stitch over earlier. Knit, yarn over, knit, and again 2 purls. Now repeat this for the entire second round. As you can see, the slip stitch cables are really not difficult at all. And it still makes a really beautiful pattern with little cables. And the fourth round is really easy. They're actually the same. We start as always with a purl stitch, and then we basically just knit the stitches as they appear, where we knit our yarn over between the two knit stitches. That means purl the first stitch, then knit 3, and just knit the yarn over 2. Then we see again, here we have 2 purl stitches. You can tell by the bump these are purl again, purl, and then 3 knit stitches again, 1, 2, 3, 2 purl stitches, and so on. That's your third and fourth round. Meaning the first and second rounds are a bit different, and the third and fourth rounds are the same. You'll notice it's really not a hard pattern at all, and it still looks pretty cool. Now you can see the first passed over cables. I knit round 1 again. Now you repeat these 4 rounds 13 more times, so you have a total of 14 of these little cables on your leg. You can of course make it longer, or do more or less, but I'm doing 14. You'll then finish your leg by knitting the first and second rounds again. Like I said, just relax, have fun with it, and we'll meet back here for the heel. Once you've repeated your slip stitch pattern a total of 14 times, your work should look something like this. You can really see all the little braids here, and the leg is super stretchy too. We're starting on the heel now, which really isn't that hard and is super quick to do. To do this, we'll transfer the stitches from the first needle onto the fourth needle. Simply by knitting them, we are now basically working with just 4 needles in total. We turn our work around and knit the first row now. We're working upwards in rows here, no longer in rounds, and always purl stitches. We also start with a purl stitch and just work a row of only purl stitches. Finish our work too, or rather our row with a purl stitch, turn the work around again, and now knit a row of just knit stitches. That's our second row. We're going to repeat this now, and this is where we make our first distinction between women's men's narrow or wide socks. And the way it works is, if you're knitting women's socks, or for narrower feet, you'll now go up 14 rows. Alternating just like I'm showing you now, purling this round and knitting the return round until you've knitted 14 rows up, or if you're knitting men's socks like I am now, you just do 16 rows, then the heel gets a bit higher, and then when picking up the stitches it also gets a bit wider accordingly. Alright, you finish the row again with a knit stitch. Turn your work and knit a row of just purl stitches. Like I said, keep alternating to 14 rows total, or 16 for men's socks. Then see you. Once you've knitted the required rows, your work should look something like this. We're back to a right side round, so a purl round, and we're now knitting the first two and the last two stitches of the purl rounds. So, the right side rounds always together. It's really easy. We basically knit it like a purl stitch, only we don't just insert the needle into the first stitch, but also into the second stitch. With both stitches on the needle, we grab the yarn and pull it through both stitches. Just like that, 2 stitches in one. We'll purl the remaining stitches normally as they appear, and we purl the last 2 stitches together again. That means yarn in front of the needle again, insert through both stitches, grab the yarn, pull it through both stitches and 2 stitches become 1. We turn the work again and knit our knit row, so our return row completely normally as they appear. We don't knit any stitches together here. Like I said, every stitch is knitted, and on the purl round we work the first 2 and the last 2 stitches together again. That means, just to write this down, the knit rounds are always knitted completely normally. On the purl rounds, so the right side rounds, we always knit the first 2 and the last 2 stitches together. And we keep doing that until we only have 14 stitches left on the needle. And that's no matter how many rounds or rows we knitted before. Once you only have 14 stitches left on your needle, we'll meet back here. So now your decrease rounds are finished, and you have 14 stitches left on the needle. Your work should look like this now, pulling together a little bit here at the top. Now comes the only really tricky part of this heel, and that's picking up the stitches. We're now picking up a stitch in every other stitch here. Here's how it works. We go into the stitch here from bottom to top, and always into every second one. Not this one, but this one. It's really a bit tight, but that doesn't matter, because we don't want to make any holes, so it really should be a bit tight. It's a bit tricky to pick up, but you'll manage. Always insert from the bottom up into the stitch. Sometimes, if it's too tight, you can also go in from top to bottom first to stretch it out a bit. But like I said, not too much. We don't want any holes. Then it's easier. Keep doing that until you reach the bottom, the last stitch. Will then be our first needle again, which means we now just knit all the picked up stitches. Like I said, it's a bit tight, but after that you've really got the only difficult part out of the way. Then you just have to pick up the other side and then it gets really easy again. Just keep going like this, and really take your time, but you'll end up with a beautiful heel without any holes. Once you've picked up all the new stitches and knit them, I'll show you how to continue. And here you can already see how nice and tight the picked up stitches on the heel really are. It makes a nice heel edge, and it's actually really not that hard, just a bit tight at the beginning. Alright, you've picked up your first needle. This is what it looks like now. It's really tight against the work, with no holes or anything, and will make a nice heel. Now we'll continue knitting the second needle. From now on, we're knitting in the round again, and you'll need to pay attention here, as we want to keep knitting our slip stitch cables on the front. So on the bottom of the foot we'll knit all the stitches, and on top we'll continue with our slip stitch cable. Since we finished with the second round before we started the heel, we're basically continuing with the third round now. So 1 purl stitch and 3 knit stitches. Now we just need to pick up the stitches along the side, and then you're basically done. Picking up the stitches actually works just like on our first needle. That means we always pick up every other stitch, always inserting from the bottom up. 1, 2, like I said, it should even be tight, so we don't make any holes. I personally always find this side a bit easier, because the angle is better, and so on, until you reach the top. Picked up all the stitches again. Now we're knitting them in stockinette again. So knit all the stitches and so on until you get to the top. Once you've knit all the stitches, it looks something like this. Once again, you can see we don't have any holes. Everything is nice and tight around our heel. Now, we basically have 1 needle left over here. These are our 14 stitches from earlier. We're just going to split these between the first and the fourth needle. That means we'll start by knitting 7 more stitches with the fourth needle, this one here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Switch needles. This will be our first needle later on. Knit the first 7 stitches here with it, and our picked up needle. Keep it nice and tight here, so you don't end up with a hole at the end. We want a nice clean heel. Work tightly so the join disappears. First stitch new needle. Like I said, we're knitting all the stitches again except for the last 2. I'll show you what we're going to do with them in a moment. We're at the last 2 stitches. Knit them together, same as left. Instead of inserting knitwise into the first stitch, we go into the back stitch and knit both stitches as 1 knit stitch. We basically insert the needle through both stitches, grab the yarn, and we've made 1 knit stitch out of 2. Here you can see our heel again, nice and even. Here, of course, we're continuing our slip stitch pattern. So we're on the fourth round of the slip stitch pattern here. So again, always these 3 knit stitches, 2 purl alternating. So we knit our fourth needle, basically just like the first one. Only here we knit the first 2 stitches together. That means inserting into the back one again, through the front one, grabbing the yarn and knitting both stitches as one knit stitch. After that, knit all stitches again. That's actually pretty much it, and that's how our heel works. We'll keep alternating now, meaning we knit for 1 round. I'll show you in a second, once we finish the row. We always alternate, knitting 1 round of all the stitches, just normally. In the second round, we decrease on the first needle, and on the last needle, we always knit the first 2 here. I mean the last 2. Or rather, the first 2 together here. Our little slip stitch cable here stays completely normal. Here, we're only working knit stitches on the first and fourth needles. We repeat this until we only have 15 stitches left on the first and fourth needle here, or 16 stitches for the men's socks. Like I said, 1 round completely normal. 1 round knitting the last 2 of the first, and the first 2 of the fourth stitches together. Have fun knitting until then, and I'll see you right after. Now you're finished with the heel, and you can start on the foot. We actually knit it the exact same way. We'll knit the first and fourth needles exactly as they appear, so stockinette stitch again, just knit stitches. And the middle ones, the second and third needles, we keep knitting with our little slip stitch cables. As for the length, I'm knitting my socks in size 41 to 42, so the foot is about 20 centimeters long, measured from this edge. Depending on whether you have a larger or smaller size, you'll need to adjust the number of centimeters. A quick tip, if you're knitting the socks for yourself or for someone who's around right now, you can just try the sock on. And if it ends at the base of your little toe at the moment, then you have the perfect length to start the toe. I'll show the toe next. Once you've knitted your foot to the required length, we'll start on the toe. The toe is worked entirely in stockinette stitch, meaning we won't be knitting our slip stitch cables on the front anymore. We're starting at the bottom of the heel, so on our first needle. I just have to knit through the fourth one again real quick. So we're going to knit across our first needle as normal, right down to the last 2 stitches. Because we're going to knit the last 2 stitches together. Here's how it works. I'll show you in just a second. You just insert your needle in the front into the second one, not here, like you normally would for a knit stitch, but the second one back. Insert through both stitches, grab the yarn, just like you always do when you knit a knit stitch, and you've made 1 knit stitch out of 2. In the next round, you do the same thing again. That means we insert here. We knit the first 2 stitches of the second needle together. We just knit the remaining rounds. And another thing to point out, which is always important, is that you basically, just like down below before you started the heel, always end after the second round of your folded cuff. Now we knit all the stitches. On our third needle, we knit all the stitches again, except for the last two, which we knit together again. That means we insert from the back and knit them together. Fourth needle, this is another even needle, and on the second and fourth, we always knit the first two stitches together. Otherwise, we just knit all the other stitches. For the next round, we just knit all the stitches as they appear and don't decrease. We only decrease in every other round, knitting the last two stitches together on the odd needles, the first and third, and on the even ones, we knit the first two stitches together. So here the last two, then on the next needle the first two. So that our toe, I'll show you real quick, goes up nice and evenly here. So, just to recap, always knit one round completely normally without any decreases, and one round always the last two stitches of the odd needle and the first two stitches of the even needle together. You keep doing this until you only have 6 stitches left on both needles for my size. And at the back, since I have one more stitch per needle at the back, 7 stitches on the needle. If you had 15 stitches everywhere, of course, once you have a total of 6 stitches on each needle, we'll meet back here. Your work should look like this now. I have 6 stitches left on the front needle and 7 stitches on the back. That means, because I'm knitting men's socks, that means I'm only decreasing on the back 2 needles now. I knit 2 stitches together, leaving the front ones, so that I have 6 stitches on the needle. If you've knitted women's socks, or smaller socks in general, and now have 6 stitches on all your needles, you can of course skip this step. So, now I also have 6 stitches on the needle, and from now on, you'll knit the stitches together at the start and end of the needle in every round. What we did every other round, now every round. And you do this until you have a total of 3 stitches left on each needle, and then I'll show you how to weave in the ends. Like I said, from now on, knit stitches together every round, so your sock is almost finished now, and now you just have to weave in the ends, and here's how that works. You cut the yarn, thread it onto a needle, and then insert the needle so, always into the first needle, from bottom to top into the stitch. Pull the yarn through and take the stitch off the needle. Same thing again, go from bottom to top through the stitch, insert the yarn, pull it through and take it off the needle. Now you do this needle by needle, making sure they don't slip off the other needles. Now, You see here in front, you have this little hole right here. You insert your needle through there now. Turn the sock around, pull the yarn through, closing the hole. As you can see here, now we just have to weave in our yarn. It's really easy. We just go into a stitch next to it, pull the yarn through. I always do this about 8 times, so it really holds, especially in the washing machine. It would be a shame if the sock somehow unraveled right at the toe. We do this by going through the loop here again and pulling it tight. Cut the yarn and the first sock is done, and you knit the second one exactly the same way. Then I'll show you the finished one. So here's your sock, and it really was super quick. A beautiful traditional sock. It also goes really well with traditional wear, or is generally not quite as bulky as a classic winter sock. You can still think about it now, since you also have to weave in the yarn. Either you leave the cuff like this. What I also like is when you fold it over. Like this pattern here, which I think goes really well with it too. But then I'd recommend always weaving in the yarn where you can't really see it. So if you fold it over, basically on the outside, and if you prefer to leave it as is, so that you weave the yarn in on the inside. Otherwise, I hope you enjoyed my video and can knit the sock. See you soon.